Blake Shelton reunites with former collaborator from the 90s during the Voice Auditions. A blind audition performance that inspired Shelton and John Legend chair turns came from an older-than-usual contestant billed as Pete Mraz. After Mraz playfully said, "I'm going to get to you," to Shelton, the country star suspected he'd ran up on, or in this case, spun around to, someone from his past. "Sounds like there's some history there." "That's normally not a good thing with me," Shelton said. As it turns out, Mraz used to play around Nashville under the name Pete Mitchell. At some point, he performed in a group called the Young Riders with Shelton. Per Mraz's explanation, the Young Riders was more of a songwriters collective than a band, which might explain how Shelton could forget a collaborator after 25 years. "It's not like they bonded in a van or a cramped practice space. No, we kind of got together. In Nashville, they do these things called songwriter rounds, and you kind of each do your thing," Mraz explained after Kelly Clarkson joked about Shelton somehow forgetting an assumed former bandmate. Mraz also quipped about Shelton stealing his bass player, to which Shelton replied, "No, I gave your bass player a job." The contestant ultimately sided with the old cowboy and joined Team Blake. Read more, The Garth Brooks Family, a look at his longtime band. It wasn't the only full-circle moment that night for Shelton. The season premiere began with Shelton wowed by contestant and fellow country music singer Kenzie Wheeler's rare triple threat mullet. The youngster got a 4-chair turn for his performance of Keith Whitley's "Don't Close Your Eyes." Wheeler's on Team Kelly. As Clarkson pointed out during the broadcast, she's led 2 country singers to victory, including Jake Hoot. Other standouts from night 1 included Christine Kane, who sang Harry Styles' "Watermelon Sugar," plus Corey Ward, Robin's "Dancing on My Own," Devin Blake Jones, HR's "Hard Place," Rain Stern, MGMT's "Electric Feel," Victor Solomon, Legend and Common's "Glory," Dana Monique, Aretha Franklin's "Freeway of Love," and Cam Anthony, Sam Smith's "Lay Me Down." The Voice returned to NBC for its 20th season on March 1. Shelton, Legend, and Clarkson are joined by fellow judge Nick Jonas and host Carson Daly. Blake Shelton, the larger-than-life country music star, has been a towering figure on The Voice since its inception. As one of the longest-serving coaches, he's mentored countless aspiring artists, often offering them a pathway to stardom. His infectious humor, undeniable charisma, and deep knowledge of country music have made him a fan favorite. Yet during a recent Voice audition, something extraordinary happened, something that was as unexpected for Shelton as it was for the viewers. In a twist that felt as if it were plucked straight from a Hollywood script, Shelton came face-to-face with a familiar face from the past, a collaborator from the 90s, someone who had played an integral part in the early days of his music career. As the blind auditions progressed in the show's latest season, Blake, along with his fellow coaches, sat poised to hear the next contestant. The lights dimmed, and the voice that filled the room struck a chord, quite literally, with Shelton. There was something in the tone, a richness in the delivery that resonated with him, beyond the mere technicality of the notes. The coaches' chairs spun around one by one, eager to lay eyes on the source of the magnetic voice. When Shelton turned his chair, however, his face transformed from the usual competitive determination into one of disbelief. Standing there, guitar in hand, was someone Blake Shelton hadn't seen in decades, Steve Andrews, a singer-songwriter with whom he'd collaborated in the late 90s. Back when Shelton was just starting out, navigating the rugged terrain of Nashville's country music scene, Steve had been one of the few people who shared both his passion for songwriting and the same struggles of trying to break through in an industry that often seemed impenetrable. For the uninitiated, Steve Andrews may not have been a household name, but for those in the know, he was a talented artist and musician whose work in the 90s had caught the attention of several major labels. At the time, Steve and Blake had crossed paths in the same circles of Nashville's honky-tonks and songwriter showcases, where young artists often performed for tips and the faint hope of being discovered. Their paths intertwined when they collaborated on a handful of tracks, combining Shelton's raw, deep country twang with Andrews' lyrical flair. Though none of those early songs ever became major hits, they were stepping stones that allowed Shelton to hone his craft, leading him eventually to superstardom. Now, years later, the reunion between Blake Shelton and Steve Andrews felt surreal, not only for the two of them, but for the audience and the other coaches. As Steve finished his song, the applause erupted. The other coaches, who were clearly impressed by the performance, quickly began their usual campaign to win over the contestant. Kelly Clarkson was the first to speak up, eager to pitch her case. "You've got a voice that tells a story, and it was captivating from start to finish. I would love to have you on my team," she said, her signature energy filling the room. Niall Horan nodded in agreement. "There's something really authentic about your style. I think you could bring something fresh to this competition." However, before they could go any further, Blake cut in, his expression one of awe and recognition. "Wait, hold on a second. I think I know this guy. Steve, is that you?" Steve Andrews, whose demeanor had remained calm and composed during the performance, broke into a wide smile. "Blake, man, it's been a long time." The room fell silent for a moment, as everyone, including the audience at home, tried to process the unfolding reunion. Blake Shelton rose from his chair and walked over to Steve, giving him a brotherly hug. The warmth and familiarity between the two were palpable, creating a moment that felt both personal and profound. "Y'all, I've known this guy for more years than I can count," Blake said, turning to address the other coaches. "Back in the 90s, before I even had a record deal, Steve and I used to write songs together. We were just a couple of kids trying to make it in Nashville, playing in dive bars, writing whatever we could to get our foot in the door." The other coaches were clearly intrigued by this new layer of history between the two men. Kelly Clarkson's eyes widened as she leaned forward in her chair. "Wait, so you two worked together back in the day? That's wild." Blake nodded. "Yeah, we were grinding it out back then. Neither of us had made it yet, but we were hustling. And let me tell y'all, Steve here can write a song. He's one of the most talented people I had the privilege to work with in those early days." Steve, ever humble, chuckled. "I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, we did have some good times, Blake." The exchange between the two men was filled with a mutual respect that had clearly endured the test of time. For the audience, it felt like witnessing a reunion of long-lost friends, each now standing in a different chapter of their lives. One had skyrocketed to fame, becoming a country music superstar and television personality, while the other had quietly continued on his musical journey, still pursuing the dream that had brought them both to Nashville all those years ago. As the excitement settled, the question on everyone's mind was who Steve would choose as his coach. Given their shared history, it seemed almost inevitable that he would pick Blake, but the other coaches still made their final pitches, knowing that Steve's talent was undeniable. John Legend, who had remained relatively quiet up until this point, finally spoke. "Steve, it's clear you've got a great relationship with Blake, and I respect that. But I want you to know that your talent is something special. I think we could work together to create something truly unique in this competition." Blake, however, remained unusually silent during the deliberation. For the first time, perhaps in all his seasons on The Voice, he seemed less focused on winning the contestant over and more on simply reconnecting with an old friend. When it was finally Steve's turn to speak, he paused for a moment, clearly moved by the entire experience. "First off, I want to thank all of you for your kind words. It means the world to me to be standing here, doing what I love after all these years. And Blake, seeing you again after all this time. It feels like coming full circle. That said, I think I have to go with my gut." He turned to Blake. "Let's make some more music together, buddy.